Hello and welcome to the Little Minds Big Ideas podcast with the Early Years Network.
Howdy, y'all.
Ben's not feeling very well today, so I don't think he's going to be overly chatty, are you?
I've got my chamomile and honey tea though, so that will seem.
That will help. Okay,
that will.
Good.
I changed the calendar as well today.
October, 1st of October. We're only filming this a day in advance today, so it's like fresh off the press for Wednesday.
So fresh and so clean.
Clean.
I'm not sure how I feel about Wednesdays. Podcast Wednesdays.
Sorry.
Though it doesn't confuse me as much as when we used to record these the week before and they came out on the Monday and then with the weekend in between.
You did.
And I got all confuddled every week. So at least now I know this is coming out tomorrow.
It is coming out tomorrow, yes.
Hello tomorrow, people.
Hello, good morning. Happy Wednesday.
Yeah. Or Thursday or Friday, whenever you're listening to
this. Yes, I've hijacked Monday mornings.
You've taken over. It's now the Emily show. I've been thrown to the wayside.
No. Feels like forever since we sat down and filmed this, though. It's only been a week.
What was the last episode? All blurred in with your other episode.
Remember.
It was about professionalism was yours.
That was mine,
and
yeah.
ours was about, Jesus, everybody listening to this, obviously. It's
culture.
Culture.
It was workplace culture.
That's it.
This week, we've got something quite easy for us to chat about because Ben's brain capacity is slowly getting to the end of its tether, isn't it? With how
it's only Tuesday.
Feeling.
It's a worry, isn't it, really? I don't know how I'm going to get through the rest of this week.
But we thought we'd chat about something quite easy, quite fun, a sort of discussional point of rural upbringings versus urban upbringings. We've got advantages and disadvantages to both, the differences, our own personal experiences. So we just thought we'd have a little chinwag about that this week.
Quite an interesting combo.
I think so.
Hopefully. But first,
are you well enough to do your jingle?
In the news.
Oh dear, everyone. In the news. I even wrote him a little post-it today when I told him what we were actually talking about. It was I put little musical notes on it so you could sing it
in the newsy woos.
In the newsy woos. Okay. So 25th of December, there was a statement published to the Gov website. And it is about the first stage of the government's plan to deliver 3,000 nurseries by upgrading spare spaces in primary schools. And this will begin next month.
This sort of follows on from what you were told in the meeting you went to, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. No, they didn't really talk about this, no.
Oh, okay.
But from next month, which I'm assuming is...
it's the Sure Start Centres things, yeah.
Next month, so I'm assuming October now, because this was obviously September, schools will be invited to bid for a share of £15 million capital funding with capacity in the programme to deliver up to 300 new or expanded nurseries in the first round. So out of the 3,000, we're starting with 300. Thoughts?
Small.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good to get 10% away.
Okay.
90% still to go.
The funding will be allocated in the spring of next year to the successful schools. So it's interesting that they're talking about expanding nurseries. That are
when they say schools, do they mean schools? It's not like one of these weird things. Where
No. So it's in schools, spare classrooms or nurseries that are already attached to schools.
So the government came out and saying, we've got this really good plan, we've got all these spare rooms. They're now basically saying, anybody fancy it?
Yes, you have to bid. So basically what they're saying is that the early years provision and access for parents isn't consistent across the country. So schools will have to bid and add their reasons as to why they will benefit their local community in doing so.
Right. 15 million doesn't sound a lot either.
No, for 300. I don't know what the maths is on that, but...
Doesn't sound a lot. But I suppose the building's already standing.
Yeah, so it's just about expanding current nursery settings within schools or transforming classrooms. Now, I've written some questions about this. So my first one is space. Are you telling me that these nurseries within schools are going to be one classroom?
Don't know, sounds like it.
And my then question is, where's the link to outdoor space? Because most nurseries within schools have their own outdoor provision.
It'll greatly depend on individual by individual. Some settings will be
able to
have some really good spare space and it'll work really, really well. Others you think, well...
Yeah. But my other one is classrooms and ages and ratios. So is this, they've said nurseries, not preschools.
In your former setting, you worked in a setting where you didn't have access to outdoors, free flow. I thought you were upstairs.
We were upstairs, but we had a garden, so you could access. It's not. We weren't sharing it with the rest of the school.
You didn't have access to the garden from upstairs.
No, but you had. It was the nursery's garden.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sure they could.
With the same, yeah, but
similar.
Yeah, but
all I'm saying is there is nurseries out there that work under similar.
Yeah. No, but I'm just saying that you didn't share it, so you had access to it at any point of the day.
I can see why, from the government's and from parents' point of view, this would seem like a nice ideal.
No,
because you drop the kids off at school, and also then the youngest goes in and they're cared for, they're safe. I can understand why for many parents it seems like, oh, and also it's free because of the free childcare now from September, 30 hours. I can see why it appeals to people.
September.
Where are we now? Yes.
This year it's...
Sorry, yeah. We've gone past September. We've literally just left.
I get it. I mean, we've talked about school-based nurseries anyway, but I think that if they're saying nurseries, are you telling me we're having babies in classrooms?
Yeah.
That's what worries me. So if you've got, say, 3 babies for 1 member of staff, 5 2-year-olds, and 8 preschoolers, that's your 3 members of staff taken. Like, is that what it's going to be, or are these going to be preschools?
I was thinking preschool in my own head.
But they keep calling them nurseries.
I know.
So that's where I question what is
the idea
going
of
on.
putting babies and 2s in there is a bit wild.
I just think
putting 2-year-olds into preschools like they do a bit nowadays.
Yeah.
Even that's wild.
Because I worked in a preschool we took from 2.5 or a 2, maybe, I can't remember. But we were on the school grounds, but we weren't outbuilding. We were nothing to do with the school. It wasn't linked to the curriculum. We were separate offsteaded, had our own garden and outdoor space. Do you know what I mean? So we're like off that side.
At the end of the day, shoehorning anything into a ready-built school,
it's going to be hard.
I mean, a lot of good nurseries are designed and built to be nurseries.
Yeah.
Shoehorn it into an establishment that's built for 5-year-olds plus.
Could these funds have been used to make purpose-built buildings or bigger
the government aren't going to open up. The government aren't going to open up their own nurseries.
Of course they're not. No,
and then they're not going to give people loads of money to open up a private business. So that's never going to work.
No, I know, but I'm just saying it could have been used to develop already established early years provision.
Which they are doing. There is a pot of money for that. It's applicable.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Deadline now, but it was.
It was there. So I don't know. Let us know what you think on that. That just came out last week, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit.
The government are stuck in between a rock and a hard place. I say it all the time when we talk about it, but the current position the economy's in,
they need people to go back to work.
That's their tactic. Because, like say at the moment, the economy as a whole isn't growing, and we've got inflation, and both of them mixed together at the same time is a horrible and deadly combination. So it's challenging, and I think the one way they've really flagged, and the reason why we've been brought into it is because they want employment to be sky high.
Yeah.
And what's one of the biggest
reasons for people not going to work is childcare.
It's one of the biggest barriers, isn't it?
Yeah. No, so it's interesting. I just thought we'd chat about it. That's our in the news for this week.
It'll be interesting to see, though. I mean, some schools will do it well.
Some will, yeah. Some will do it really well.
Some really good establishments.
Others won't.
No.
And I would like to know the age group that they're hoping to get here. Because if it is getting people back to work, it will be babies.
I personally hope, and the fact they are doing it slowly and then expanding it, I just hope they're vetting it properly. I'm not just talking about safety, but also quality.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you just open it up to any Tom, Dick and Harry to open up a room and say, oh, this is now a nursery. Like, hang on a second.
Yeah. I know. But yeah, that's it.
Because I remember even when I was in primary school, and I went to a rural primary school with tons of fields and stuff around. Our primary school playground and playing space,
small, wasn't it?
Really small, like really inadequate. On hindsight, I mean, like I said, I've said on this podcast before. When I was in primary school, we were only allowed to play football on the football pitch once a week, and you were only allowed to play football on the football pitch. So growing up in primary school, I could only run around and play football with my friends once a week in primary school.
That's crazy. My primary school was huge. Like, huge. I vividly remember, like, reception had their own play space with a massive climbing frame. And then everyone else shared, everyone had, their own courtyards, and then it would go into the big playground. And then we had a football pitch marked out on the concrete. Then there was a bit round the corner that had the Noah's Ark on the wall. And then we had up the ramp, we had a massive field, which wasn't always open, but you could run around and play football on the other bit. And then we had a back field, which was used for races.
So
It was huge.
so did you say races or racist?
Races, like running races.
Send all the racist kids to that field.
No.
No, my primary school was probably, the playground area was probably 2 tennis courts in size, maybe even less than that.
That's crazy.
Like you probably had the top bit was like a rectangle, probably tennis court size, and then there was another bit it was sort of like a fat L shape, like the bottom of the L was really fat, and then that bit was tiny. You had the fence there. Honestly, I remember being in primary school, and if it wasn't your football day, God, it was shit. And then there was a little corner alcovey bit. It was sort of by the way, we used to play football in there, but then the teachers would always come and take our ball off us. So shit. When you think about it, really, really, really crap practice. So if you then put a nursery into that,
where are those kids going to go and play and explore and free flow and
bundled over?
Probably, yeah. There is that fear as well. Well, that kind of segues nicely into what we wanted to talk about.
Which is ironic because if you had to say you went to a more urban child and I had more rural, who would have had more play space as a child? You would have got it wrong. Because you would have probably guessed the rural. But
then I wouldn't necessarily, because the villages are smaller and you've got there's smaller spaces.
Yeah, but there's ample of space around, isn't there? You would assume you'd make the most of it. Because then we went to secondary school, which was right down the road. We had more football pitches and cricket fields and things you could take a stick at. We had all the outside space you could ever want. I mean, at my secondary school, there was there was at least 2 football fields, 2 rugby pitches, a cricket pitch, a running track, and then in terms of courts, I don't know, we had like 3 courts that you could play football on. Like,
do you know what's mad? I don't know what your secondary school's like. I went to a sports college first and then a different one I moved. It's like a normal secondary school. I don't know what its speciality was. I don't think we really had one.
When I was in secondary school, I went and became
a tech college.
Yeah, like a technology, and everyone was like, I think it was computer science almost or something like that.
I can't remember. Well, first was a sports college, and you weren't allowed to go inside at breaks. Was yours like that?
No.
You couldn't just hang out inside?
No. They encouraged us to go to the library.
No, like in the corridors. You couldn't just sit in the corridors.
Oh yeah. Where'd you go in training?
Well, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's always certain corridors you went into, there's certain corridors you know not to go into because you're running certain kids that you don't want to run into. So yeah.
No, we had to be outside. Anyway, well, you had a rural upbringing, didn't you?
I did.
Very much so.
I wasn't a farmer, but I grew up in a village.
You were in a village. And I wouldn't say I had an urban upbringing, but it was more urban than you.
It was, there's a word for it, isn't there? The middle ground. Suburbs, that's the one.
Yeah.
You were suburban.
I was a suburban child.
Oh, I was a
rural boy.
Yeah. I mean, there's it's not proper rural, is it? Or is it proper
Yeah.
farm
I've
folk
moved here.
vibes?
It is definitely farm folk vibes.
Backcountry.
Yeah, no. But we've got here some differences between the two. So I want to get your opinion on them, on the two, the areas that I go down, okay?
Go on then.
So we've got the first point is access to education and resources. So rural areas, schools may be fewer in numbers and there might be limited access to specialised educational programmes or extracurriculars. And teachers and education materials may be less varied. Whereas in urban areas, there's a wider variety of schools, more access to extracurricular, and the diverse learning opportunities are sort of a little bit more. I think in terms of learning opportunities and educational material, the curriculum is the curriculum. Yeah. So in terms of that, I think maybe not as much. But where you grew up, how many primary schools could you have gone to? Like how many?
It's a funny one though, isn't it? Because I think primary schools and secondary schools are quite different.
Yeah, they are.
I think, and I think you see more of
more primary schools.
I think there's more of I think this conversation is probably more applicable to primary school than it is secondary school. I think once you get to secondary school,
oh yes,
I think secondary schools are quite similar throughout the country. I think no matter where they're based, even though mine was actually I mean, as much as I lived in a village, both schools I went to were in the village I grew up in. Yeah. So we had a big ass secondary school, sort of on the outside of the village. And that's no real different to the surrounding ones in Northampton that I'm aware of.
No.
In terms of...
I don't know if we've ever said where we live in on the podcast.
Oh, there we go. In terms of the area. So I think primary
People
school.
are going to know which conference I went to last week now.
I think primary schools, you tend to see more disparaging gaps, I think, between...
Yeah, this is probably more primary schools.
Because when you go into towns and cities, primary schools replicate almost like little secondary schools.
Yeah.
Whereas like when you look in the villages around us and generally across the United Kingdom, village primary schools, they're almost a throwback, aren't they, to like Victorian times when you look at some of the buildings.
Yeah.
They often are
nice, though.
very old buildings and quite quaint. And I'm sure what they teach inside them is the same, but you see a bit more of a gap.
Yeah. And access to extracurricular activities, I'm not sure how different it is.
I think regardless of the school, I think often...
This isn't always a school, though. This is areas now.
I know, but in terms of extra... Oh, right. So I think in terms of like sports
this
teams
is like
and stuff like that.
rural areas and urban areas. They say in urban areas there's more access to extracurricular activities, like closer to the environment. But I don't think that's true because I think regardless, if you want to find your kid a club, you'll find them a club.
I think in modern Britain, there's football teams in villages, cricket clubs in villages.
Yeah.
It's probably harder, I would almost hesitate to guess at, in towns and cities.
Maybe. Probably more linked to schools.
It's easier to find a football club here than it would probably be in a massive city.
Yeah, maybe.
Because you've got football fields all around all over the place. Every village has a park and a football pitch.
True.
I've never lived in a town or city, so except for being as an adult. But
I was going to say you literally lived in London.
Yeah, but other than being an adult, but even when I lived in London, the football pitches were few and far between that I stumbled across.
Yeah. Okay. Community and social networks. They say in rural areas there's a stronger sense of community. You grow up knowing most of the people in your town, and you have long-lasting friendships with fewer people.
What's that, rural?
Rural. And in urban is more greater diversity of people and cultures and experiences. You kind of develop more casual friendships due to the fast pace and larger population. And there's more structured social activities.
There's a few things to unpack there. But first things, just because my primary school, most people who went to primary school didn't live in the village the school was in. So it was still a catchment for all the other villages around.
Where did everyone go? Was it just not many people in your year in your village at the time?
No, there was barely any children in the village I grew up in. Just because the school was in there didn't mean the children were.
Just where the space was.
So as a result, I very rarely played out like a typical child going around knocking on friends' doors, doing a play out type thing, because I relied on my mum to ferry me here, there and everywhere to see friends and play football and stuff. So I one of the things I disliked the most on hindsight, if that's the right word to say, I felt quite secluded where we grew up and lived. Even though there was hundreds of houses in the village, there wasn't anybody my age really within that.
Whereas I went to, because we moved down from Scotland to where we lived in our suburban area. And my mum couldn't get my older sister into either of the local primary schools. I think there's two where we lived. So we had to drive to the next little not town, but suburby bit. And I obviously went to that primary school as well. So we drove there. So the people that lived on my street and in my area
different schools
went to the local schools. Yeah. But there was, growing up on my street, there was 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 1. Like there was 8 houses with kids of similar age groups. So we were constantly playing out.
Yeah.
So that's like different. I didn't go to school with any of them, but we grew up on the same street. So we were always out playing.
Yeah.
With friends in the street.
Whereas that's the difference. I think growing up on estates and stuff like where we live now would be more beneficial for children from a social standpoint.
Yeah, there's loads of kids playing out near us and on the green and stuff. And we do live in a village. But like the outskirts of it and a more built up side of it, I suppose.
But also probably more of a suburban-y village than what the village I grew up in was, especially in the 90s.
Yeah.
Most people who lived in the village then were older people.
True.
And there were children, but when I was, 5, 6, they were all in the teens. I think sometimes it's just
potluck
demographic of what the place is.
So we're going to skip through some of these because I'm not sure how. Okay. Healthcare and services. They say in rural areas, there's limited access to healthcare services and fewer social services or support programs for children. In urban areas, it's easier access to healthcare services and a broader range of support services like councils, after-school programs and youth centres. I think that's changing now.
One thing I would say about the previous one, just before we move on from completely, demographic-wise, when I went to school and grew up, there wasn't a rich diversity of people. Like, it was a predominantly white British school. With very little diversity in there. That sort of came to my mind earlier as well, in terms of one of the negatives of rural growing up in those aspects. Whereas when I went to university the University of Nottingham, and suddenly diversity obviously goes off the chart, and people from not just from different ethnic backgrounds, but people from quite literally different countries and stuff. And it was quite eye-opening and enjoyable to meet people from different strands of life. So I think, whereas if you grew up in a more urban environment, you are brought up around
lots of different
and I think that does help with acceptance and living amongst people. I'm sure very few of my friends who I grew up with and have any other way of looking at it. There are always, so maybe it doesn't make that much of a difference. I don't
just
know.
Exposed to it earlier on. So.
Yeah, and then I think actually most prejudices and negative views of such actually come from
parents' views,
the home. Yeah.
I agree.
Sorry, healthcare.
I think that's very much the same in both areas. I wouldn't say moving from like suburban area to here that I've noticed that much of a difference. If anything, healthcare is actually better here in the rural area.
Less demographic population.
Well, essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, independence and freedom. In rural areas, children may have more independence. They can roam around a lot safer. There's less exposure to crime or safety risks. But in urban areas, there's more restrictions on where children can safely go, higher crime rates, and there's a lot more structured supervision with a focus on safety.
I think in modern Britain, everyone's petrified nowadays of...
Oh my God. Well, last night I had to charge our car and I was at a petrol station at 7:30 at night, and I'm not even joking, I was petrified. 7:30 on a Monday.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about urban children growing up, you then have the whole kettle of fish at the moment of gang crime and being indoctrinated into gangs.
Yeah. Being groomed
and that lifestyle, and that is at the moment in Britain a real concern and issue, and something they should be tackling more. It's actually an area I think some of the funding money should be going to. I think there must be a better way of utilising, instead of everybody just blanket getting
X amount of money,
the funding money, regardless of how much. I know there's the £100,000 cap, but that doesn't stop two families earning, each individual earning £90,000 each, for example, £180,000 a year. I just think we should be putting more social money towards, one, policing and getting tougher on handed out sentences, and anybody being caught with a flipping knife that looks like a medieval sword, there should be harsh punishments to try and nip that one in the bud.
Watching Police Interceptors with Ben is the funniest thing.
Oh God, why?
Well, because anytime anyone does anything wrong, you're like, right, lock them up. Lock them up, get them off the streets. And I do agree, but then I think, God, the prison systems...
The thing is, prisons don't help, though, because they just go in there, it just becomes worse. They come out of prison with then even less opportunities in life, and then you push them even further down a route of crime, and it doesn't actually help anyone.
Being in prison is safer for them than being on the streets where they've got nowhere to live, so they do crime to get back in.
Yeah, but they also then meet more people who are just going to turn the screw and brainwash them, and it's just a never-ending loop there.
Criminals fascinate me, though, don't they?
Thing is,
criminology and things like that I find so interesting. So I'd love to sit and talk to someone who's been to prison.
So many people are pushed into those situations because of their environment.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays, you put the radio on and you hear music about glorifying stabbing people, and
not the music I listen to.
You know what I'm trying to say. There's massive amounts of celebrities. I mean, Digger D was invited to the BAFTAs only a couple of years ago, and his whole music revolves around murder and making fun of it. So I don't
know. Okay, so they're kind of some of the differences that we've kind of glossed through, okay? And then I'm going to go to rural areas.
So just to say as well, though, it's not all rural areas. One thing I didn't want this to become was not all rural areas are higher income families.
No, that's why I didn't touch on that.
It can
regardless
reverse,
of,
100%.
So I've got here some advantages and disadvantages of growing up in rural.
Go on.
So we've got advantages to growing up in rural areas. We've got connection to nature.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Because you can get outdoor, less polluted environments, lots of outdoor activities going on, healthier lifestyle, etc.
It's funny. When we were younger, me and all my friends couldn't wait to move out and go to London and the big cities. So many of us have moved back.
Yeah.
Because you get used to, and I think it probably works the opposite way around. If you grow up in New York or London or wherever it might be in terms of big cities, and then also you move, it's probably really boring. You probably miss what you remember as a child.
Hustle and bustle of it. Yeah. So there's that, a strong sense of community. They say that rural communities are often close-knit, long-lasting friendship. I have to say, your parents have still got such strong relationships with the people in that village.
Yeah, but I'm not.
But like, they still do their things in that community. There's still lots going on in that community. Not as much as when you were younger and everyone had their kids and stuff. But yeah, I think it does prove that it is a closer knit community.
I think communities as a whole in the United Kingdom especially, I think they are declining.
Maybe.
If you think about establishments, like pubs, for example, used to be the heart of a lot of communities. If they are, I think I saw somewhere there's almost like 30 pubs a day closing across Britain, or a stat like that.
That's sad.
So I don't know. Once upon a time, if you speak to your granddad, I bet when he was a young lad, he knew everybody down the street and knew everyone. In our local area, we could probably only name our direct neighbours in terms of names.
I think that's our fault.
Oh.
I just don't think we're very sociable being. We never leave our house.
But yeah, I bet it's more true than not.
If we went to our local pub more, though, I bet we'd know more people.
Yeah, but then it rolls around drinking again, I guess, doesn't it?
Doesn't have to. They do a mean, I don't know what dear.
Coca-Cola.
Scotch egg.
Me too. It's a bit weird to sit at the bar, though, with a Scotch egg. And
at Christmas, they did a pigs in blankets Scotch eggs. It was like a homemade Scotch egg with bacon. Oh, my God. I hope they do that again this year. That's exciting.
You are a Scotch egg.
They say less stress and pace of life is a bit slower than urban. That's an advantage to growing in rural areas. Independence and freedom, less traffic, crime. This is just generalised, this is.
Yeah.
Lower cost of living, I don't agree with.
No, that's bollocks.
That's a lot. Safety, crime rates in rural areas are typically lower than urban environments, which I think is true.
Yeah. There's less people, so I mean...
Yeah. And then the disadvantages of rural areas. Limited educational extracurricular opportunities. Again, I'm not sure how true that is. Access to health clubs spoken about. Fewer social or cultural opportunities. And I think you kind of touched on that because you don't get as exposed to as many different... Which I think is probably changing now as more people are moving.
I mean, the whole nation's becoming more diverse, so it will... naturally happen.
It can sometimes feel isolating and lonely in rural areas because you don't have those links as closely knit as you do in an urban area. Limited career and job opportunities.
Sorry, especially if we're focusing on children.
Yes.
If this is like you're weighing up, do I live in the rural countryside or do I stay in a town for the sake of my children and growing up and going through schooling? Yeah. There is pros and cons as you're going through it for both elements, isn't there?
Yeah. These ones kind of don't like conservative or traditional social norms. There's probably more traditional or conservative social values in rural areas.
Oh yes, tons of toys around us.
Tons of toys around us. I wasn't going to put it like that, but yeah, fine. Which can limit the exposure to diverse perspectives, ideas, and lifestyles. So the conclusion on that one was that growing up in the rural area provides children with advantages like connecting with nature, but also comes with its challenges of not being opened up to the wider world at a young age.
Yeah, which is probably spot on.
Okay, urban areas.
Yeah.
Advantages, access to quality education and resources. Urban areas typically offer a variety of schools, including public and private. And
that's just something I never thought about. Our local primary school is a C of E primary school.
It is
Christian primary school, yeah. And a lot of them, when you drive around it, are as
Church
well.
of England, yeah.
I'd never actually really considered that, but think about it. Every day we went in, we did, what's it called? assembly. We sang our little religious hymns. Yeah. Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah, I know. Crazy.
It's mental, actually, when you think about it, isn't it?
I didn't. I don't think I sang that many hymns. I went to church sometimes with primary school, but more at Christmas to do the Christingle and hold an orange.
It's weird because everybody I know who I went to primary school with isn't remotely religious.
No.
Strange.
Well, they do say in urban areas, though, you expose you to more cultural diversity.
Yeah.
Lots of cultures, languages, background. You're introduced to different types of people from an early age. Open-mindedness builds tolerance and an understanding of the world around you that you're growing up in. These are all the advantages, by the way, sorry. Variety of social and recreational activities. Again, I think we've kind of said, but this talk touches upon museums, theatres, libraries, galleries, things like that. Frequent like concerts, festivals that are in and around urban areas more so than rural areas.
Yeah, but how many children are going to concerts?
I went to loads of concerts growing up.
Yeah, but so could someone who lives in where you live doesn't necessarily define that.
No, true. I think the things like libraries and art galleries and stuff, because there's not like there's one library around near us.
Yeah.
Whereas I could have walked to a library.
But you got Amazon, haven't you, nowadays?
So it takes away from the experience.
How many
going
people
to the
actually go to
library.
libraries these days?
I know, but why don't it's sad.
I don't think I've been to a library since I was in university. In fact, I'm sure I haven't.
Probably not, no.
You say it's sad, but why would you?
It's nice.
When was I saying I went to a sweet shop?
Oh, I don't know.
Secondly, the things that are...
Few and far between.
Yeah, regardless of where you live.
Transport, public transport in urban areas is usually more developed.
Yeah, of course.
And more frequent, so children get exposed to being independent on public transport.
Yeah, but again, how many parents are actually letting their children be independent?
I don't know.
You say that, actually. All children in primary school had to get buses to the primary school here, so... It's another one. Yeah.
In primary?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay, disadvantages to growing up in an urban area. Exposure to pollution and environmental hazards. More traffic, more cars, it's just going to equal more pollution.
More pollution.
Unhealthier lifestyle can affect children's health in those areas.
Yep.
Crime rates and safety concerns. But like you said, I think everyone at the moment is petrified everywhere.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you rural or not, or urban, everyone's scared.
Weirdos everywhere, aren't
It
they?
is. Less access to nature and outdoor space, which we touched upon.
I think that's what the biggest one it comes down to as well.
Greenery.
What we do a lot in early is culture capital.
Yeah.
Because there's children in rural, in urban areas who would never even come across sheep and horses and cows and things like that. Whereas it's the type of thing we take for granted.
100% the green space that we've got. Yeah. Overstimulation and stress, which I thought was quite an interesting one. Because in urban areas, you could have a fast-paced city life, constant noise, crowds, busyness. Like children who have to get the tube to go to school, primary school.
Poor children.
Like could be result in anxiety, difficulties with concentration because your brain's overstimulated, which I hadn't really thought of before.
Yeah.
Less sense of community and social connection. I'm not sure if there really is a difference in that. Cost of living is higher in urban areas, they say. If you think about it, like London prices, things are.
Yeah. So, but you're just fixating on London. There's loads of other urban areas in all the other towns and cities.
Increased competition. So there's more population of people going for that sports club. There's more academic pressures.
Jobs and such, isn't it? That's regardless of where you grow up.
That can lead to burnout, stress, mental health issues, etc., even at a young age.
But even if you grew up in a rural environment, you still have to compete for the same university spaces and jobs and stuff afterwards. And it's not even just the UK now, it's worldwide you're competing against.
Yeah. So growing up in urban areas provides children with access to excellent educational resources, like cultural diversity. However, the benefits come with its challenges, pollution, safety concerns, etc. Balance of these is key to making sure that children in cities thrive emotionally and intellectually.
I think...
It's a conversation we've had a lot recently because we are hoping one day to have a family, if we're lucky enough to do so. And it's that balance of where do you want your children to grow up? What environment?
You'd always side with your own childhood.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think
For your own experiences, you make those decisions.
I think from a parenting standpoint, like there's not a good right or wrong answer with rural or urban or whatever else it might be.
No.
It's what experiences and opportunities you give children on a wider scale. Anyway, so if you know that you live in quite a secluded area, it's about getting your child involved in different sports teams, different clubs, whatever it might be that they enjoy, to give them that element of socialness. Because I grew up in a very secluded area, like I said, but I was also busy all the time.
Yeah.
My mum was taking me different places probably 5 or 6 times a week. Like I played all sports, did all clubs, like I did everything. So from that point of view, I can never actually complain because I had a wide group of friends because of all the different things I did.
Yeah.
So though I couldn't go knock on the next door neighbours and say, do you want to play out? I was never not busy.
Yeah.
And I think it's things like that makes the difference. One of the biggest ones, though, is, like we said earlier, about different people and different backgrounds and different ethnicities. That is a harder one to solve.
In everywhere, yeah.
But I'm also comparing, I grew up, 25, 30 years ago.
The world is completely different now. Your neighbours look different. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Even the village you grew up in looks different now than it did.
Yeah.
When you
the sports teams probably a different collection of people and only for the betterment of widening people's scopes and understanding. But yeah, I think it really comes down to how you expose children to those different facets.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's it, really, I think.
Yeah, and then the other scope to it is, like we touched on earlier, what's happening in the UK at the moment with gang crime, and it's becoming a bit of an epidemic at the moment.
Yeah.
And then there's the other aspect of a lot of tensions at the moment bubbling under regards immigration and bits and pieces like that. It's becoming quite tense environment, I would say, at the moment in the UK.
Yeah,
as a whole.
I agree. Should we just move?
I don't think it's actually just an issue in the UK, though. To honest with you,
Australia.
I think if you read the news in Germany, the Netherlands,
a lot of Europe is very similar.
very similar. You recently, I'm going to say Austria. I've just voted in far right or right party. I think it was Austria, something like that. And you're seeing this rise of, I don't know the word far right, but parties that align more to those ideologies and ideas. And I think it's reflective of the mood and the atmosphere across Europe, the globe, and discontent in the Middle East. Obviously, the horrific what's going on in Hamas at the moment. And you add all these factors up, and it's reflective in society in a smaller sense, a more local sense as well. So I think most parents will know where's best for their children, and where home is.
Feels like to them. Yeah. Well, if you want a bit more of a lighter chat, Diary of an Early Educator this Friday is talking about My Mum's Your Dad.
Is that what you're going to talk about?
My Mum, Your Dad, yeah. So
We haven't finished that yet.
No, we haven't. So I didn't do any spoilers because I don't want any spoilers.
Yeah. If you've not watched My Mum, My Dad, or My Mum, Your Dad,
yeah, give it a watch. Really good.
Yeah, go check it out. It was quite fun, wasn't it?
It was good.
Season 1 was better than season 2.
Yeah, I think so too.
Season 2, they were a bit... took a while to get warmed up, didn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas in season 1...
Right, don't steal my conversation. People can listen to me chat about this on Friday.
Yeah, but they like to... But I want to be involved.
No, you're not involved. Get your own podcast that launches on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Can you imagine 5 days a week podcasts?
No, I don't think I've got the brain capacity for that.
I need to go take some drugs. And
Oh, he means paracetamol.
yeah. Yeah, nothing too hard.
No, just some paracetamol, some
The
Sudafed.
shock in your face, like people would be sat at home just thinking,
I don't know. We don't know.
Ben's a proper rock star. When he gets off the podcast, he just goes,
Right,
heroin.
enough. Thank you. Right, we will see you next Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, and we hope you enjoyed our little chat. Let us know what you think, and see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.